introduce a friend of mine, Dr. Tom Besser, who is a retired WSU microbiologist. Yeah, is that correct? That's correct. Tom says he's not a botanist. He doesn't know about ecology, but I think he probably learned and knows a lot about ecology, just a whole different scale from what I can see. He is taking on the task of reconstructing the prairie from an old wheat field. It's been very interesting. I've been out there a number of times seeing what he's done, and it's been really, really interesting. He's talking about lots of people, some in this room. And he is going to host a field trip out there sometime in June. We haven't decided on the date yet. Kind of see how the season plays out. So with that, I welcome Tom.
Thanks, Steve. I'm going to turn on this microphone. Can you hear me? My voice is kind of private, getting on the road, so easier to do this. Thank you all for coming. It's great to be here. You know you're not going to learn any botany from me. We had that the first section. Yeah. So I live 4 miles north of Moscow. Yeah. This is Foothill Road going up here, and this is where it gates up at the mountain. Here's where the headwaters trailhead parking lot is. You know, you can out there at all. This blue line is the headwaters of Paradise Creek, and one branch goes through our yard. The main branch goes up here. And this white area here is the location of the 3.5 acres that we're doing this project on. A little bit closer from you and to tell you why, what my initial motivation was for doing this. This is our home property. We've lived there since 1986. This is some land I ended up owning over the years. And it's the approximate slope on here, and you can see that across much of this project, it slopes down toward my yard. And maybe 3 times in 40 years, we got bad spring where there would be a lot of rainfall on where we crop that hadn't really settled the ground yet. And bingo, I get 2 or 3 inches of new topsoil all across my yard. And so I had the idea of taking this project slope toward the house and converting it to perennial vegetation to just stop that a little bit. I don't know, honestly remember how I got from that idea to, well, as long as I'm putting in perennial vegetation, maybe I should make it native Palouse Prairie vegetation. But somehow that came along, and that's what we did. So we're trying to do. My guiding principles in starting this project was pretty much had to be self-sustaining, at least in the long run. I didn't mind investing time and money and effort for a while, but I didn't want to be weeding 3.5 acres for decades to come. And I thought of it as being, this has to be a resilient project, and I thought what I even then knew about Palouse Prairie remnants is they're very resilient. They've been abused and trashed for 100 years or more, and most of them are still pretty cool and pretty beautiful. And so I was hoping we could try to use like that. This is what the wheat field looked like a couple of years before we started the project. But I tried to just go back to this other. That mesh I was going to do, but you can see that this white area is where the project is. Everything north of there is Moscow Mountain, Ponderosa Pine, mixed conifer, forest, and pretty much everything south of there is ag. So we're right on the border of the agricultural part of Palouse. It's so yes, in wheatland. It's been being farmed for a long time and very productively, but it's kind of on the border of where it was. My neighbor had been farming this land for decades. Before him, the Lewis family had farmed it for even more decades. And that 80 years, that resulted in a pretty nice, clean looking, dirt field. Of course, thousands of years before that, it probably was mostly Palouse Prairie. The planning of the project started with Brenda Earhart at the Wildlife Conservation District. I mean, she was the brain trust. She planned, helped me plan what to do. She helped me find the seeds and decide how much to buy and put it. I did tell her that I wanted to seed it heavily. I didn't want to mess around with waiting for things to fill in. I wanted to have enough seeds so that it might come in strong right from the building start. She helped me with that very well. We got the grass seed from Clearwater Seed Company, and we got the form seed from Jason Jensen's Store Creek Native Seed Company. And it was drilled in, the seed was all mixed together and drilled in on September 1st, 2017. By that same neighborhood, we've been farming it for decades using this 30-foot wheat drill, and a lot of effort and somebody running back and forth and plugging the drill holes as they clog up what the little that berry seeds. This, I'm going to kind of blow my load for a couple of years here, bear with me. You know, I think it was Brenda, but somebody told me that when you do these projects, they crawl the first year, or I can't remember, there's a little acronym, but it said not to expect much for a few years, and that certainly was true. Here's what it looked like in April. There's little hints of green there. Even by the end of May, it was a little greener, but there was no flowers, and it was not much to look at. So I got really close. And then you can see all these stars of native prairie plants. And it's kind of amazing that you can actually recognize what most live already when they're half an inch across. Now, some of these are, most of these are good things that were in my seed mix. Some of them are weeds, and I know which ones they are because of this one. We started working on weeds, speaking of weeds, right from the start. And so the very fall we seeded it, we had seen some, we had seen some of these little lawn-like areas of fine grass that brothers know are annual grass crops growing in the fall in October, November. And at that time, I thought it might be bentonata. I was worried about bentonata, and we got instructions to spray it with a low concentration of glyphosate, and didn't spray it, and we didn't do anything to it. We also got a donation of some fluorescent tube. One is that Anna Kennedy at the USDA unit that WSU had developed that she felt was inventory of cheatgrass. And because it was free and that didn't people doing harm, we put it in a suspension and sprayed the whole project with that as well. And we didn't know there was cheatgrass around. The wheat field that was there had patches, pretty bad cheatgrass mixed in quite a lot. And then the next spring, as these things started sprouting for the first time, you really can't help yourself when you walk across these places. You can see something that looks like a weed, try to pull it. Now we pulled quite a bit of cheatgrass that first year. It's pretty recognizable, pretty young. As this growing season went on, we found that a lot of it still pulled easily, but some of it really fought back, and we realized that some of what we've been pulling was not grown. That was in the seed mix, not the. But I don't think we did much damage. There's plenty of mountain growth still. And then also that first year, I noticed the far edge where the project met the wheat, still wheat field. There was another band of that obvious Indian grasses coming up. And so starting that first year, I just picked my little lawnmower and bagger, and when it got big enough to be able to harvest the seed, I just bagged the seeds up and bagged them up and took them away. And I've done that ever since. It's only like 2,000 foot lawnmower. And they're still coming up there. Okay, the second year, this is the year of grapes, I think. And we did have some flowers, mostly yarrow, Oregon sunshine, some of the things that come down really fast, but they're really nice to see them. Later that summer, we clipped part of the project, or most all of the project, actually, for two reasons. One is at the two ends, it was obvious that we had poor germination of the seed that we planted. So I had a couple extra bags of seed from the original mix. And so I wanted to clip it to expose the soil a little more so we could spread more seed on those areas and hopefully fill them in. Other parts, and I think you can see a little bit of it here. We have a lot of that rat-tailed fescue, which turned out to be, that's what that annual grass was that was in the project for the most part. And we got advice that this product called Aaron could control that as pre-emergent, and we damaged the other growth. So we went ahead and tried that again. Wanted to clip it to make the spray reach the ground. That's the seed. Seedlings in the second year were quite a bit bigger and more exciting, but obviously still a long way short. We did have our name information started moving. That's exciting. Here's one of the ends of the project that were really sparse after the first year, and so those some of the areas we overseeded with the initial seed mix. So this is, we need to explain it a little bit, but this is actually from the next growing season, the growing season after we sprayed that Laramie to try to control the rat-tailed fescue. And what you're seeing here on the left is dog kennel, or sneaky chamomile, some people call it, but it's a weed, an annual weed. It's rank. It was always planted in the project in the first few years. On the left, you're seeing some white flowers that are mostly yarrow. There is some dog kennel in there too. This is the area that I sprayed with that Laramie to control the rat-tailed fescue, and it controlled it really well. And it turned out that the rat-tailed fescue had been inhibiting a lot of other stuff, including dog kennel. So when you pick away the rat-tailed fescue, that stuff just exploded. And here, this brown stuff you can see between the yarrow and the organ section, it's actually still rat-tailed fescue. It's not as dense there as it was before. So the spray really worked. We didn't give it the Laramie. So what's the line? The line is I didn't spray the whole project. I sprayed several areas that had the worst, densest rat-tailed fescue. And I'm really glad I did, because then I could see the end and I could see what the treatment was doing. Because in addition to this effect, there was this effect, and probably doesn't show up very well, but a lot of the bunch grass, Idaho fescue in particular, in the sprayed area was looking really sick the next year. And a little bit later in the year, it showed up as areas that were completely wiped out from that Idaho fescue was gone. I want to back up a second here and say that this happened where I sprayed the Laramie, but it might have been the sprayer, not the product that Cloud was following. They clearly hurt the project, but I was spraying with the little peak that sat on top of my ATV, side hills, making corners to try to. It turns out I gained a real appreciation for how difficult it is to spray a product and given those evenly and not double spray areas or triple spray areas, under spray others, and so on. So I don't know to what extent Laramie damages. I've heard stories of other people with similar problems, so I know I'm not the only. Third year, I don't really have many pictures except this one. It always looks kind of nice and fall and gold and see the distance. But the third year was our worst weed year of all, and we had yet another weed, prickly lettuce, the year of the prickly lettuce invasion. And prickly lettuce was coming up everywhere in fast and fall. And again, probably my compulsiveness and overkill, I figured if we weeded systematically, we had to somehow break up the area to be able to weed a reasonable piece at a time. So I got these little, I don't know if you can see them, these little red and white driveway ones. They're super cheap. And I just rented out the whole thing in 30 by 60 foot squares. And Kathy and I and all of the friends we could convince to come out of those ones. Just went through these ones at every time and pull prickly lettuce. This is a small number of probably 50 or 60 large garbage bags of prickly lettuce that we pulled off that year. And we started pulling, this one, the first flower buds started appearing, and we gave up when the ones that we hadn't weeded yet had pretty much gotten to releasing their seeds. We got well over half the project done, I would say, maybe 80%. Here's the kicker. In the next year and in the year since, we've had very little prickly lettuce, either on the part we weeded or on the part. But it's just kind of phenomenal how it came, it is in one way. Let's skip forward to a couple of years, 2021, 2022, and then again last year. Really, we've got a beautiful, flowery, mostly Palouse Prairie planting situation. It's much less diverse than real remnants, as you might guess, and I'll get into that more detail in just a second. But boy, the little sunflowers that year in 2022 were just beautiful. Beautiful. Here's some of the various species in their blooms. We actually had started to get a couple of later season plants in here, like this goldenrod and the milkweed. The majority of the stuff we seeded were early summer bloomers, and it really got pretty boring after June. Because everything had looked at dormant, and there wasn't much left, and they've been working on that ever since. A couple of my favorite plants, early balsam root, was in the initial seed mix, and we could see it every year coming up, getting just a little bit bigger, and maybe finally getting 2 leaves instead of 1. And here in 2022, so excited, I found this one star. I don't know if you can tell what that is, but that's a bud. That's bud. And this leaf hasn't even unfurled yet, so it's just a baby bud. And unfortunately, it came back a week later, and what I had was some deer munch. We actually did get a few blooming last year, and 2 at least, maybe 3 individual plants. But I counted a few of my sectors, and I expect there's probably over 2,000 fairly balsam roots that are coming along. And so in another, who knows, 5 or 10 years, it's going to be quite spectacular. Another one that I'm really looking forward to, I don't have as many pictures of it, is fern formation. That was a seedling I took the very first year they were growing, and I just took this one this week. So they're still coming up 1 leaf at a time, 1 leaf per plant, but the leaves are much bigger. So I'm hopeful that sometime in the next few years we'll actually have some fern formation. Again, there's many hundreds of these all across the project, and they're an outstanding plant, as you know, when they bloom. So I'm really looking forward to them. I wonder about pollinators on the project. I certainly see a lot, but mostly what I see the pollinators is late in the season when most of the flowers are gone, and what's left are mostly asters at this point because I don't have any late season bloomers. And those asters always have huge number of pollinators just crowding in on them. So I suspect there's quite a few pollinators there earlier too, but there's just something flowers that I didn't put them out. I don't know. I took this one this spring, and that's a bumblebee on a graveler. You know that plant, but it's like 2 inches tall. So there's the bumblebee working away. I would like to learn more about what pollinators are there and what they're doing. And but we had to talk about pollinators on native prairie remnants, and they have a huge diversity of pollinators. I have no idea whether these reconstruction projects, how much of that diversity they get, or how long it takes for them to develop. That could be a lot. Seen a lot of other critters on the project and around the project. I was pretty excited by this Merlin that Charles and I saw on Christmas bird count there, and it was hunting the juncos that were feeding on the prairie. You can see some of the other things. Most of them I don't know what they are. I've never seen an North American raised snake in my yard before, but here was one. That's pretty cool. And this is Biscuit. He loves it. Most common critters are holes in both groups. It's just astounding how much digging they do in the winter and early spring. It just looks like it's been plowed. I try to take advantage of this when I'm processing new seeds to add new species. There's a lot of bare soil here, and so I spread the seed there and try to avoid the dense grass areas. I guess I want to switch gears here a little bit because I'm at the point when these, with a few good years, like, well, is it a prairie or is it not a prairie? I have no idea, but I learned about this fellow, Stoudemire, which probably everybody in the room knows about. I didn't really know much about him before. But American botanist and climatologist, he worked 10 years at U of I and longer at WSU afterwards. And he was a big shot in the ecology field, community theory, how all organisms within a community interconnect. Whereas before his time, the main theory about how plants distributed was anytime the range and what you get in certain places where those overlap. And he felt that there was more interconnections in that. And he was first that I'm aware of to really detailed description of the grasslands of Eastern Washington or Idaho. This is one of the maps that's in this 1942 publication. And I circled in green here that diagonally dashed area stretches from the Snake River Canyon almost up to Spokane and from the forested areas of Idaho up to the Scablands. And that's really the core. And he called it the Festuccium. But it's really not, it's very core. And in studying this, he published a bunch of ways of counting what was in this, but this was one of the ones that I liked. He found 14 remnant prairie sites, and he tallied them for consistency of species. So the species that were present in all 14 sites got a 14, the ones that were only present in 3 got a 3, and there was another 28 species that just got a 1 or 2 in this case. And so I thought, well, it'd be interesting to compare my species against his list and see what that is. The paper's freely available, by the way, if you're interested in it. One of the statements in here that I really liked, is this one. Those time of year in balsams, either sunflowers are in full flower, blades of yellow color makes the fence corner relics of this association conspicuous and prove very useful in locating areas for study. And all I could think was, well, it's a good thing you did this in the 1930s and 40s, because we don't want to find a fence corner anymore out of every street. Anyway, this is my this is his list of that consistency of species, and the highlighted in yellow green are the seeds that were in our initial seed mix that were regularly commercially available when I started this project. And there's quite a few gaps there, but there's an amazing number, and especially this first column, which is the most consistent species across the Palouse Prairie at that time. They're almost all in the seed mix. And I thought that was just fantastic that whoever had, because it's people that did all the work to make these seeds growing and harvested and selling and available for projects like mine. Since that first seeding, I've been working on adding more species because, again, like I said, when you look at mine and then you compare it to a real remnant, you recognize it's not very diverse. And so these blue ones are additional either seeds or target species that I've been able to find since that time. And again, we're not only got the first column mostly taken care of, who's told me it's going to be a tough one to find in here. We'll get most of the second column and even some of the third. So it's really, we're really getting there, I think, in terms of getting that list. We've also found seeds or starts from a bunch of other species that weren't on Stoudemire's list. And I've also been a regular customer for the native plants account. Thanks here and there. Said a few weeks with the song. It's still growing and living every year. I just want to read in the weed and weeding thing one time to summarize it. We had these waves of weeds the first few years. We did a lot of stuff with them, but I'm not convinced that anything we did really made a difference. I think what made a difference is the maturation of the prairie plants and their density and the competitive environment that they provide for weeds. And the one thing I know we did is we damaged identified and still having trouble growing in those areas that much grass is really built up. The weeds are all still there, but they're generally sparse. Concerns I have now for species like ventonata, common grass, furniture, rush-tailed weed, all of which surround the project, either on county road or up in the understory of the forest. But so far, at least, they haven't been too bad. And so my new theory is trust but verify. You gotta trust the prairie's resilience and give it some credit that, you don't have to pick every weed. Some of them are just gonna go away and most of them are just gonna go away. And verify, and that is, I thought I better start actually monitoring so I could tell what was happening, not just year by year, but just to see what happened over time. And the specific questions I had is bentonite really increasing? It's definitely there, or maybe it's just holding its own, or maybe it's getting squeezed out. And are we invading the project edges? Because the edges seem like the more vulnerable parts. So I started this monitoring, started last year doing monitoring, using a method that's on Brenda Gerhardt and the Lake Sonoma Conservation District website. It's pretty easy, just make a transect, and I made 4 of them across the project, 100 points per transect, and you do this by just walking the transect every first step of the point. And I made 2 transects to the center of the project and 2 along the edges, so I could compare the edge back with the rest of it. And then every third step, you look down and you look at the point that's the tip of your boot, and you count all the plant canopies that are above it, and record them. And I just made a little entry form and 4-letter codes. It was a good way for you to learn their specific names. And I could do all 4 transects in less than 2 hours. So it doesn't take a lot of time. It takes more time than that to take transcribe from the record sheets down to a computer so you can power it up. Here's, I don't want to go through this in detail. This is my 2023 monitoring. It shows what species were detected at least once in those 400 points that I did. And what I was relieved to see is that some of the things I was most worried about, bentonite, red-tailed fescue, prickly lettuce, and plantain, they're all on the monitoring list. So when I do them again this year, I'll have at least the first data point of either increasing, or what's happening. So I'm looking forward to it. This one I'm really proud of because I found 2 points out of those 400 where there was bare ground. So there's not a lot of open niche here for weeds to come in and land and take off. I think that's the reason that it's been good. Many sites sheep out there might people be interested in the costs of all this. I'm not going to cover the cost of the land because I did that to prevent development in my backyard and it's way more than anybody should have for it, but I've never regretted it. The initial seed was the vast majority of the costs of this project to date. So the 4 seeds cost around $5,000 for 3.5 acres. The dense level that I requested and grass seeds cost $1,000. I bought this land is kind of such a wild gut, so you can spend $250 over the years on plant sites. Just last year, Brenda arranged for me to get U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service grant for another $3,000, which I plan to invest entirely in also in additional seeds to try to raise more diversity into the project. So all told, it's cost less than $1,000 a year if you want to look at it that way so far. Money that I don't regret spending. Don't have much equipment for the project. I got my regular lawnmower with its stagger, it's a self-propelled Honda, and it's still going strong after about 20 years. I did buy a ATV throw behind rough country mower, and I used that a lot those first 2 or 3 years on the project. I think so, I'm not seeing it, likely that I'll ever use it again. And this is my little ATV sprayer that I did on one arm and so when we applied for the Fish and Wildlife Service grant, Brandon needed a name, so I named it Paradise Headwaters. Paradise Headwaters for a reconstruction project. We're 7 years in now. It's always been interesting and fun. Lots of surprises. Been quite educational. I learned a lot, and it's been for several years now more beautiful than I ever expected. But yes, sir.
Just been trying to ask a question. Oh, I'm sorry. What? Did you take your hair off?
What do you say?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Anyway, I'm done. I just wanted to say that if you're ever in a position where you could consider a similar project, I'd say go for it. It's been so rewarding and enjoyable. Oh, and one other thing I wanted to make sure I did get another acknowledgement. Brenda Earhart, Casey Jensen, Trish Sheehan, and there's probably many more sources of seeds, advice, encouragement that have helped me with this. Appreciate all of that. Not any questions? Nancy?
We have a similar project going on in our household, not as scientifically done as we are doing. So three that you're involved in, I think it would be, but he's the engineer. But I have a question about the shrubs, the Palouse Prairie shrubs. And we have them all around our property as well as our moving. Even more into the prairie cat. Are you purposely taking those out, or are you letting them grow and paradise where you see it in one spot?
Right. Nancy asked whether what we're doing about this, the voluntary shrub invaders from all the shrub populations all around the project, which we have, like she has in her pocket. And that 2023 year that we had all that moisture, or sorry, 2022. One thing a year for me, because last year I probably had hundreds of them. In my case, mostly Douglas Hawthorne, because that's the predominant tree around there. I got tons of hundreds of pines starting up all over the place. And the question was, what did I decide to do about it? I'm taking everything out pretty much except for snowberry and wood and wicker rose. And I may change and I may relax on that later on, but that's what I want. Especially if I don't really want it to turn into more letters pine understory, which I think it would in a flash if I didn't treat those. And I've got it from my 7 acres homestead, I've got 3 solid acres of hawthorn and bramble. I don't feel like I need it. Yes.
I'm in year 2 of a wheat field restoration, and I similarly had very careful seed germination in year 1. I tested the pH and it was strongly acidic. Corrected the pH, everything took off in year 2. Have you monitored the pH to see if it's bad or if it's changed at all as the prairie progressed?
I think I remember that question. You got a great question, you boys. I started measuring pH this year after I saw those great seminars and presentations this past year about the problem with acidification of Palouse wheat field. I wasn't aware of that issue before. So I don't know what it was before the project started. I would say we got pretty good germination across most of the project that first year. The 2 areas that were really sparse both happened to be within 50 feet or so of the ponderosa pine boundary. I don't know if that had something to do with that. I know roots stretch way out there, so it might have been less moisture available there. I don't know what the cause is. In reseeding it though, it has really filled in there, so it's really good. If I was to go back again, knowing what I know now, I absolutely would check the pH and I mean maybe even corrected it. Did you want it to
did an experiment line and biochar was a lot of that.
See,
Yeah, I have a comment and a question. My comment is, I work with a lot of people trying to do what you're doing, but they're starting with CRP.
yes,
That's a whole different story. Battling all of these grasses that we're establishing. Now we come to establish into that side of those grasses. Question is, you indicated, I think that you've done overseeded the forest the first year. Do you think that is what's necessary, or do you do that again if you were to do it over?
question whether I, whether I'm reviewing again, to buy the heavy or any grass to be on seeds. I think I've overseen both of them compared to what other people were doing here. I actually want to, I know, and I don't want to do this over after 3 years. It wasn't very much money when it came right down to it. And I would rather get myself for having too many than not having enough. And I absolutely know what I mean about the, especially things like smooth grow and intermediate grasses, they reduce a real, terrible problem for people that can for certain.
You're talking about or reseeding some more, I think.
Yes,
So how are you gonna do that? Just broadcast?
yeah,
And then did you have broadcast previously and we force you down? Didn't see it now.
so by the time you oversee, these additional seed species that I'm adding, it's all been broadcast after the first year was drilled, everything else has been broadcast. When I had those 2 bags to see those 2 ends, I borrowed, cedar, from soil water conservation for that, it's much easier. But it's, for that part of the project, it's pretty easy to just distribute them by running out of seed, and spreading them and make sure good. And like I said, I think I'm focusing on trying to see where the prairie's a little thinner or where growers is really going strong, so I hopefully they'll have. I did have the very first, because my seed mix was supposed to include Western Aster, but it became unavailable right at the last minute that fall. So I got, Jason provided the Western Aster seed the next year, and I spread it immediately, and I pretty much spread it broadly across the whole place. It took 2 years before I started, I thought it wasn't going to take at all. But it took 2 years, and every year since, there's been more and more Western and just Aster popping up from that seeding. So I think it worked. It just, you have to be very patient. And I think seeding is an already established stuff makes it even slower. But come on, so I'm probably going to wait a few years before I find these, before I give up on seeding this additional 10 or 15 species that seed since then.
Susan,
There used to be crop really arrival with water, with the soil, and I think that's that.
Yeah, and then when I didn't want to go on to speak of it, that was kind of unusual. It happened maybe 3 times over the 35 years. It takes a bad combination of a heavy rainfall, a wheat crop that hasn't developed enough to hold the soil. So there's no sign of any erosion coming off. I doubt it will. I mean, it's that soil is locked in place with a lot of vegetation. So I think we're that's me again in 15 or 20 years. Yes.
Can you remember how many cows you see in the drill or acre?
I don't know if you're interested in that, we'd like to share that with you. Yes.
In the process of doing this, if you found like the regional group of all prairie runs who might know which one is not that is out on responsible. So I wanted to consult someone to see if all this.
Is it in lifetime?
Yeah, it's yes.
So the question, if I understand it, is you have something that looks like a prairie run and you're wondering if it's on non-listed program, so we have that.
So that.
I think you can look that up, the Lake Top Planning and Zoning has the, GPS or GIS maps that plot out all the known, spots, so if you want to look at planning and zoning office with the coordinates, I think they could tell you whether it's on this. Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
Great.
if it was a prayer, we got talking about, getting, tackling the ground. Yeah.
If it is a program and it's not on the known list, how do we get on there? David, do you have any benefits?
I think you should still talk to like County Michelle
For sure.
and tell her that you have one that is about their list. And I think their GIS and also put it on. I know so.
Did you hear that?
Yes.
Michelle planning and zoning would be place to start.
You could also find somebody in the Lake Council and Water Conservation District,
Yeah.
like Brenda or, or the next week.
Just to add to that, we complimented the treatment, said capping, with better.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if they were completely, certainly in the counter, there's no for the board.
That's my understanding. This district pretty much focuses on the Washington side and, lay on ours. But it's for our past.
Palouse Prairie Foundation, love and all that, to check on nominating authorities. Check on the website, or contact information.
More questions? Brian?
One on your map. Yeah, I think so, yellow line or something around the whole property. Where the remnant was, the planting is, and the side to the west, the golf club park of the property. You own that too,
Yeah, that's, so the 3.5 acres is part of an acre parcel. That when somebody was starting to, build a manage there. And actually, I own another 11 acres, far west of that, since there was, to stop another development project that luckily the 2008 recession stopped that one, so I and my neighbors were able to.
So you contact on
I suggested to Kathy this year that we consider expanding the project to 10 acres, but he didn't go over well. Thanks a lot.
If they have questions, can they contact you?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
What's your email? Is that the best way?
Probably t.e.besser@gmail.com.